Over the past week, I was in Paris to play a poker tournament with Gabriel Nassif. After I busted the main event, I decided to stream the Modern Challenge on Gab's Twitch account to a top 8 finish. In this video, I'm going to run you through my top 8 journey and explain my plays. The deck I played with was Blue-Black Control with Preordain. This is a list that Gab and I have been designing off stream while I was in Paris. The game plan of this deck is to disrupt the opponent until you can cast the One Ring, and then you can overwhelm the opponent with spells when you draw a load of cards. This is good especially alongside all the free spells in the deck, as well as many things costing 1 mana. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get into the top 8.
Oh shit, we're in the top 8, okay. And we won the die roll.
We have an ideal start in the quarterfinals with a great opening 7 and being on the play. The game starts off slowly with me and my opponent just hitting land drops, but then they cast a Tarmogoyf on their second turn. This is awkward for us as the only real way to remove it in our deck is the 4 Fatal Push and an Edict. I'm keeping this Orcish Bowmasters in hand as it is a removal spell for any Ragavan or Bowmasters the opponent could play. And now with a ring and 4 mana, we've got to cast it, and we're rewarded for keeping the Bowmasters in hand because the opponent has a Bowmasters of their own. After they ping my face with the Bowmasters, I just say go and they play another Tarmogoyf. I draw a card on their end step, and then we can use the Bowmasters on my turn to kill their Bowmasters, so now we can draw more cards with the One Ring. And we can draw even more cards because of this 2-card combo on the board. As the One Ring is legendary, we can untap it with Manamo so we can activate it again. After activating the ring the first time, we only find a land and a subtlety. Now here, I could just play my land and pass the turn and draw cards on my opponent's upkeep, but I actually want to draw during my turn because then I can fill up my graveyard so that next turn I can play a massive Murktide Regent alongside the ring. So here I think it would be better to untap the ring now, try and find a Fatal Push, and if not, we can dump more spells into the graveyard to fuel up this Murktide.
If I can go ring Murktide, I'm probably in a good spot.
I thought I'm in a good spot, but my opponent has a Fatal Push to push through a lot of damage, so I instantly put my Force of Negation on the stack because I need this token to chump block. Also, don't be afraid to aggressively use your free spells when you have the One Ring on the board because you're going to draw a million cards next turn anyways. Now my opponent dashes Ragavan, attacks in with everyone, so I'm just going to have to chump. With an Archmage's Charm off the top, I can draw 4 cards with my first One Ring, play another One Ring, and play my Murktide Regent like we planned. From here, the opponent plays an Urza Saga, just casts a Ragavan, and passes back the turn. I decide not to draw with the One Ring on their end step because I don't want to go down to 1 life. Don't forget, they're probably playing Renin 6.
I think here we're just going to steal both of the creatures. We're going to attack, steal both of the creatures. Attack, steal both of the creatures, and then I still have to rip.
With a 7/7 Murktide on the board, I need more than 2 attack steps to kill the opponent. So here I've got to put my opponent down to 10, steal both of their creatures before they attack so I can chump block both of the Tarmogoyfs, and then hope to draw something off the top of the deck.
Okay, I need Shieldred off the top. There's a lot of things that I need off the top. I have no way to counter that, sadly. Wait, what? They just missed lethal? I guess they're afraid of me having Force of Negation?
With the opponent making a questionable play with Terminate, I have to decide if I want to use the One Ring on their end step. I decide here because I'm so far behind on the board, if they have Renin 6 or Orcish Bowmaster on the top of their deck, then they've got me.
Okay, Shieldred or bust. Still, Shieldred or bust.
Let's look at the power of Preordain here. We get to look at 3 cards for a Shieldred. This Preordain finds me a Preordain, so we can Preordain again to look at 3 more cards.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Does this get me out of it? It's close. It's close because of the construct. I think I still die. Here, chat.
The reason why I think I'm going to die to the construct is that my opponent can get something like a Shadow Spear or a Pyrite Spellbomb to add extra damage onto the board. So when the opponent makes a construct on their end step, I'm very worried here. I do have Orcish Bowmasters as a double chump blocker, and I can untap the One Ring to draw a load of cards if I need to gain more life with the Shieldred. After the opponent tanks for a very long time over this Urza Saga, they eventually decide to make a construct and get Haywire Might out of their deck. Now with the opponent attacking with everything, I can flash in my Orcish Bowmasters and chump block and eat a construct.
No, I can still win. Because they have to exile the ring here. Can't ping Haywire Might, they'll sacrifice in response and I don't get a token.
So after blocking everything, eating a construct, and going to the opponent's second main phase, they have to use Haywire Might to exile my ring, which is actually great here because then we don't lose any life to it. Obviously we need to top deck, but we have a lot of live draws. And like an absolute beast, we rip Fatal Push off the top of the deck. Now it's important to remember that Minamo untaps a legendary permanent. Well, Shieldred is a legendary permanent. So actually, my Shieldred has pseudo vigilance here, but we can surprise the opponent because maybe they don't know it has vigilance. After untapping the Shieldred, flashing in the subtlety, we can block the construct and the Tarmogoyf and Fatal Push the other Tarmogoyf to hopefully kill the opponent. After the Fatal Push goes on the stack, they concede the game and we're moving on to game 2. Going into boarding, we need a lot of removal spells, Damnation, Shieldreds, Relics, because we need ways to interact with Urza's Saga. I then took out a subtlety and brought back in one of my edicts. Game 2 starts off with a great opening hand as we have both a Lauren reveal to find an island as well as a relic and a counterspell.
Okay, I'm happy with that.
I'm happy with that because if the opponent had a Ragavan here, we'd be in an insanely awkward spot because we can't easily remove it. Things start off awkwardly with the opponent having a turn 2 Wrenn and 6, which is going to be hard to remove because we're on the draw. It's going to be hard to find, but we do have one Shieldred's Edict in the deck to answer the Wrenn.
I owe a lot of people in the Twitch chat money. Wow. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Can you put a 1 in the chat if you were thinking I needed to board in Shieldred Edict? A 1 in the chat if you were the one telling me. Oh. Okay, no. How many of the Twitch chatters wanted me to play it?
Obviously need to do some Twitch interaction. I am trying to get Gabriel to see some Twitch primes here. I do pass back and not Shieldred's Edict on my turn because I want to have Counterspell up for any high impact cards. And if they do nothing, then I can Shieldred's Edict the Wrenn on their end step. If you didn't see that, they just put their Jegantha companion into their hand. The opponent plays a Chromatic Sphere and Urza's Saga and a Duress, so I'm going to Counterspell the Duress and slam my One Ring. Obviously the opponent can get a Haywire Might from their Urza's Saga, but we are fortunate enough to find a second copy. Now the opponent has the Haywire Might in their hand, so they just instantly exile my One Ring and now hold up Urza's Saga to make another construct. So they make 2 constructs, but then have a second Haywire Might from the Urza's Saga to get rid of my ring again. Now here's where there's some debatable plays I make. With a Fatal Push off the top, I have a decision between maybe casting Damnation, but that's bad because we know the opponent has Jegantha in hand, which we will find very hard to remove. We could also cast double Orcish Bowmasters to kill both of the construct tokens, we could cast the Shieldred if we want to try and block the construct tokens and get a threat on the board, or we can cast Subtlety to block. I'm really not sure what the optimal play is here, but I decide to go for blocking with Subtlety. Leave me know in the comment section down below what you think the right line is, because don't forget they have Jegantha in hand, which is a card we will find very hard to kill. Now I think in the moment I kind of forgot about Jegantha, because I just cast the Damnation here. I really have no reasoning for my logic, I guess because I killed the Construct and the Bowmaster, but it would probably be way better to just cast both of my Orcish Bowmasters here, because that would be better on this board. Now the opponent slams to Jegantha, and we're going to be in a very awkward spot, at least Shieldred can block it nicely. With the land off the top, we can play our Shieldred, play our Preordain, and Preordain both of the cards to the bottom to find an Archmage's Charm and gain us 2 life. Now the opponent can fetch and play a Fatal Push to hit us for 5 and put us in an awkward position. Now with 2 Bowmasters, we can technically double ping and double block the Jegantha, but that might be a risky line. Instead I go for the line that the Orcish Bowmaster can make a token to chump block the Jegantha, and we have 4 chump blocks to gain us 20 life. On their end step, we draw 2 cards with Archmage's Charm, and they do have an Orcish Bowmasters, but I can Fatal Push that anyways. Finding a Shieldred and an Archmage's Charm, I cast the Shieldred, hoping that it would stay on the board. The opponent does have a Fatal Push, but we can counter that with Archmage's Charm to make their life more awkward. After using Archmage's Charm, we pass back the turn, and in the opponent's draw step, they have a Terminate for the Shieldred. From here, we really couldn't do much to win the game. We found a counterspell which I used on an Nihil Spellbomb, and then found an Otawara which we could bounce the Orcish Bowmasters to replay it. They do play a Wrenn, ping my Bowmasters, I bounce it, and I Bowmaster the Haywire Might because they can't sacrifice it in response and we want to draw One Ring. With the counterspell off the top, we gotta go to game 3. Going into game 3, we have an amazing opening hand because we have Preordain to shape our hand as well as Fatal Push for any turn 1 Ragavans. The game starts off like a typical Control versus Jund style deck. They have a Nihil Spellbomb, and we hit our second land drop, and they play a Tarmogoyf. Now things get interesting on their third turn when they hit their third land and cast an Inquisition of Kozilek. Here, I need to Fatal Push the Tarmogoyf in response at minimum because that Tarmogoyf will be big and hard to kill. Now then I have to decide if I want to play the Orcish Bowmasters or not. I think here it's good to play the Fatal Push and the Orcish Bowmasters and force the opponent to take the Archmage's Charm so that we both have pressure from the Orcish Bowmasters as well as we draw a load of cards with the One Ring. That would be a nice plan, but the opponent has a follow-up Duress to take the One Ring to essentially destroy my hand. With an Orcish Bowmasters off the top, I believe it's a mistake to play it to add pressure onto the opponent because there are many big creatures they could play which would brick my board, as well as they do play Ragavans. And now with the Tarmogoyf going into play, I'm happy I didn't play my Bowmasters, but I'm not happy about my draw step because I just find a polluted Delta. Here we're hoping that the opponent has a very slow hand because we need to find something to be able to add value to the board. With the opponent attacking him with Tarmogoyf, I chump block, get a tap land, and we find a Fatal Push off the top. After getting in for one, we can see what the opponent does on their turn and decide from there. I decide to Fatal Push the Tarmogoyf and they follow up with the Gigantha. Now here with a subtlety off the top, you can either decide between Damnation or actually trying to race the opponent. I can actually put a lot of pressure on the board with his Orcish Bowmasters and Subtlety, and I can potentially beat the Gigantha's 3 combat steps to kill me. After saying go, the opponent attacks in for 5, we take it and they play a tap land and pass. So I play a Bowmasters, attack in for 3 damage, and they have a Fatal Push. From here, the opponent didn't have any follow-up play last turn with a load of mana, so I decide I might as well cast my Damnation and hope that they don't find a creature from their draw step or the Nihil Spell Bomb, and then their Subtlety will win the game. This is potentially loose logic, but I just thought it in the moment might as well. Don't forget, I've been playing Magic for 10 hours at this point, so my brain wasn't really working normally. After the opponent draws a card with Nihil Spellbomb, they untap and play an Orcish Bowmasters and an Inquisition of Kozilek. What's good though is like an absolute beast, I find Counterspell off the top of the deck. Now we can play the Subtlety to block and counterspell any potential removal spell. And that's exactly what happens. The opponent attacks him with their Bowmaster, I play my Subtlety, they play their Terminate, and I can then block because of the counterspell. They follow up with a Red and 6, which isn't a problem, and we find a One Ring because we're just so good at Magic the Gathering.
Fall in love with me. Possibilities, I look like all you need one.
After resolving the One Ring and drawing a card, the opponent takes a draw step, fetches with their Bloodstained Mire, and dies because the Subtlety is now lethal. As I've won the quarterfinals, we're now going into the semi-finals against 4-color control. Let me sum up game 1 for you. My opponent plays a turn 3 Teferi Time Raveler, and I die. Then on turn 9 in game 2, my opponent plays a Teferi Time Raveler, so I hardcast Force of Negation. The opponent does have Flusterstorm, but that doesn't matter because I have a follow-up counterspell. The opponent then thinks for a minute and then casts Dovin's Veto, so this Teferi Time Raveler resolves. I'm not gonna lie, Teferi Time Raveler is pretty good against my deck. Here it's just a quick win. They managed to get it down on games 1 and games 2. Is what it is, it happens. But what is nice is for you gambling degenerates, I have 73 chests to open at the end of this video, so as always, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.